Hi everyone, my name is Ponithan Santanan and today I'm going to talk about the perception and the communication. First of all, the process of human perception. Perception is the active process of creating meaning by selecting, organizing, and interpreting people, objects, events, situation, and other phenomena. As an example, perception is a thing or an opinion that defined by a person according to people, objects, events, and situations. The next is the selection. The selection, we select to attend to certain stimuli based on a number of factors. We select stimuli that stand out above the others. Self-indication, noticing things we have never seen before, and our motives and needs. Who we are, what we need, why we need it, and where we are at the moment in time. Culture in which we grow up influences our perception. And then organization. Constructivism. We organize and interpret experience by applying recognitive structures called schemata. Prototype, the clearest or most representative example of some category such as particular group of people, places, objects, activities, relationship, or events. And then personal construct, mental yardsticks that we use to measure a person or situation along a bipolar dimension of judgment. And also stereotype, generalizations about people and situation that allow us to predict another person's likely behavior. And script, guides for action. They consist of sequences of activities that are expected of us and others in particular situations. Moreover, in interpretation, the subjective process of explaining our perceptions in ways that make sense to us. Attributions, explanation on why things happen or why people act the way they do. It can be separated into four. They are locus, stability, specificity, and responsibility.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'm Mardina, and I will continue from Huwei's topic with common attributional errors. So, common attributional errors occur when we attach distorted meaning to what happens around us, which basically mean we have misconceptions with others. What we interpret is not always true because we don't know what the person are thinking and feeling. So number one is self-serving bias. So self-serving bias is basically we are being biased to ourselves. For example, we are in a group work, and then suddenly our group didn't get a lot of marks, and we tend to blame others instead of look at our own effort on the group task. So oppositely, it can also happen when we succeed, in which all the credits only goes to us instead of people who supported us or helped us in the past. Number two is fundamental attribution error, which means we tend to overestimate an internal cause and underestimate the external causes, and it also works vice versa. For example, we have a serial killer with a tragic background. So some people might think that because of the tragic background, which is the external causes that leads to him being a serial killer, but it probably be the opposite, because it may be that even with a good childhood, he would still be a serial killer, since there are people with bad childhood, but also but doesn't turn into a serial killer. So next is influences on perception. So number one is physiology. Our state of mind and body can influence our perception of others. For example, like when we are hungry or tired, we tend to be grumpy and very abrasive towards others. but it may not because we are that way, just because we are tired and very hungry, you know. And second is age. Age also influences the way we perceive others. And you usually seen people who are older and more experienced as more mature and maybe more responsible and supposedly more knowledgeable, and a person who are younger and maybe less experienced tend to be more childish or playful, something like that. And next is expectations. So our expectations can make us fulfill a self-fulfilling prophecy. For example, our parents expect us to get straight A's, and that expectation may lead us to work hard in order to fulfill the prophecy of us getting the straight A's. The same goes if they want us to be a doctor, and it may influence us to become a doctor in the future also. So next is culture. So for culture, the social location the social location, which depends on the social groups which we are belong in a particular culture. For example, we usually condemn people going out until midnight, but maybe for Westerners, going out until midnight is a usual thing and a common thing. And then role. For role, something that we are trained to feel it. Like for a teacher, we are trained, maybe they are trained to be tolerant towards kids, they are trained to be gentle and patient. For next is cognitive abilities. Cognitive abilities is a learning process. So the first one is cognitive complexity. Cognitive complexity means that people with more schemata for organizing and interpreting situation are seen to be more cognitively complex than those who rely on few personal constructs and focus more on concrete categories than abstract ones. Which means people who are flexible and can interpret without sticking to a particular category is seen to be more cognitively complex. Next is person-centeredness. Person-centeredness is basically we use the knowledge of that person in order to guide our communication, so we can tailor it the way we speak to that person. For example, if that person has suffered from the loss of their father, we might not speak something that is sensitive to the father topic to them. So next is self. So our self is a big influence on our perception, because once we have a good perception of others, and others will probably have a good perception of us. Next, I will be talking about implicit personality theory. Implicit personality theory is a collection of unspoken and maybe unconscious assumption that we make with people. For example, we think certain qualities go together in people. For example, a person who is shy, introverted, and quiet girl. We might think those three are usually goes together, but maybe shy doesn't always mean quiet, and quiet doesn't mean always introverted. Next, on social media and perception. Social media actually influence us, shape on our perception. For example, we always seen the most famous one is usually something typical like racism, maybe sexism. Maybe they said women shouldn't be a leader, or this will happen, blah blah blah. The context of digital media also influenced by our culture membership. Next, our sense of perception is molded by social media. So what we see on social media may influence the way we think, how we see a person. For for example, like we see Kanye West as this, like maybe a psychopath, or maybe someone with very very full of himself. But we don't know ourselves, how he actually feels. So lastly, I'll be talking about guidelines, how to improve our perceptions and communication. So we have to remember that all perceptions of our perception of others are partial and subjective. Which means that there is no one perspective, there is no one perception. So we might think this person is like this, but others might think otherwise. And next is don't mind read. Basically, don't just think that person will do that just because they act the way they are. And next is we need to see it in a different perspective. Like for example, we need to see it the victim's perspective, and maybe the opposite perspective. And next is we need to distinguish between facts and inferences. Inferences are basically what we predict, predict the truth, but it is not actually the truth because it's just what we think what it is. And second is to avoid self-serving bias, which is don't be so full of yourself and don't blame others. Try to avoid the fundamental attribution error that I just stated. And we need to monitor labels, and because we shouldn't just go and label people. For example, like we go label people with tattoos as seen as very violent or in a gang, etc. So that's all from me. Thank you very much.